Troy, Nick, Shane,
Steve Limpiaco.
Steve Limtiak, PDN. Don Sulat, PN, PNC.
Scroll.
You're Ro, you're not Ro. Okay. There'll be somebody coming in shortly to bring me the documents, but we can go ahead and start. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here today to answer any of the questions that you guys may have regarding a story first broke by Candid News concerning possible police corruption, reference to a 56-page document that was released recently by the Federal District Court of Guam. And, I've had the opportunity to review the entire document, and in response to it, I have, of course, opened up an internal affairs investigation. Due to the amount of time that has lapsed, we're looking at over 6 years ago, and the amount of people that we anticipate may need to be interviewed, I've go ahead and reassigned an officer temporarily to the internal affairs section to assist the short staff over there, because we are short staffed all the way around, including internal affairs. There's only currently 2 investigators there, so we assigned a third one to kind of take the lead and assist with this investigation into the allegations brought forth regarding these documents. And so at this time, I'd maybe just start with answering the questions, because I think there's more questions that need to be answered from the media. I think we'll start with Troy. You want to start?
Thank you, Chief. Who are the officers in internal affairs, and have you vetted whether they have any relationships with any of the actors named in
Sure.
the two warrant applications?
Yeah, so actually, I'm going to focus on the very first one that you pronounced.
18-00001, right?
I believe that's the first 56-page document. I haven't had a chance to review the second one, so we can address. I won't be able to answer, to that document because I haven't reviewed it yet. Hasn't been made available to me. But with respect, of course, to the officers, I know the officers that were named in those things, right? So it doesn't mean that I'm not impartial and I can't be objective. And so the same goes with our investigators, right? We've worked together for decades, and so we all know each other. We've run into each other, probably at lunch, and met and talked to each other. So I think the important thing about internal affairs investigators is that they understand that they have to remain impartial, and they have to be objective at all times with the investigation. And their job is to determine if there's any administrative wrongdoing committed by the officers involved in the investigation.
What about criminal investigation? And also, is there a criminal investigation into former Lieutenant Governor Ray Tenorio and the alleged ties that he had to Boom Manzanilla and Ken Manzanilla at the time?
So my investigation at this point focuses strictly on the administrative side. I haven't had a chance to speak to the Attorney General or to others within the Guam Police Department. Should we open up an investigation into the Lieutenant Governor or any other person for that matter named in these documents? So my job is really just to look at the administrative part because of the allegations that they're the police corruption.
I'm sorry, before we go around, do you have any information since reviewing this document? Has anyone come to you, or has there been any sort of information about Ray Tenorio's possible criminal involvement?
We just assigned this case to our internal affairs just a week ago, or not too long ago, about a couple of days after you broke the story. So, we're very early on into the investigation. So I think as we progress, if there's anything else that we can publicly share, we will. And, that's, I think, where we're at with that right now.
I have more questions.
Sure, absolutely.
Everybody else has.
Shane?
So how long do you believe this internal affairs investigation could go on for?
Well, generally we follow the 90-day rule because that's the current rule in place with the Civil Service Commission and with the personnel rules and regulations. So, we have up to 90 days to investigate any administrative wrongdoing. Of course, in a criminal investigation, the length of time, is longer depending on is it a felony, is it a misdemeanor, and what crimes are we looking at?
And so for the administrative side, I understand Captain Kim Santos, her name, or she's alleged of, I guess, helping with getting police clearances clearances, and I understand that that can kind of be a practice among police officers, so people don't stand in line. I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Yeah, I can speak to that, absolutely. As the chief of police, I get calls almost weekly, if not daily, for people needing police clearance. Let me give you an example. Okay, the Guam Election Commission sends me a list of names. They need police clearance for all those temporary workers that are gonna be assigned at the precincts. I get a call from AmeriCorps, they send me a list. Believe it or not, I process thousands of H-2B workers. They're required to submit a police clearance. So yeah, it's a common practice for police officers to say, hey, look, you know, this agency, this person needs a police clearance. And what we do is we just follow all the regular procedures, you know. They should have an authorization in place, or they should have the authorization from the person they're requesting the police clearance for. So, you know, in the context of, since you're talking about the captain, you know, she told Boom, I believe it was Boom,
Yeah.
it's ready, go pick it up, you know. So whether or not, you know, we have to look back at the context, but I think what happened here is the agent from the FBI took the request for police clearance and put it into context that sensitive law enforcement information was being released. And let me just make this clear now. I've had the opportunity to speak to local FBI leadership here in Guam and also their special agent in charge from the FBI office in Honolulu, which oversees the Guam office. And they have assured me, in the context of this document and this investigation, any of the officers outside of the retired captain and the retired officers, the two Mentanones, there are no criminal matters that they're investigating regarding any of the current police officers named in this document.
So Randy Uggan is not under investigation.
And if you look at the context of that text message, right, Troy, it says, call me about Randy. Unless I get a statement from Boom and Ken, I don't know what the context of call me about Randy, right? It's very easy to take things out of context, but it's also very easy to say, that's all I know. And that's all I know. Until such time, that's part of our investigation, go out and talk to the two Mentanones. Would you like to tell me what the context was of the conversation that you may or may not have had regarding Randy Uggan or Kim Santos or any other officer for that matter, right?
So just the two Manzanones.
Right. And that's
As far as
because
names
because the two is where a lot of the text is going on, that people were trying, you know, were drawing conclusions about, hey, there's corruption going on because Boom's talking to Kim, is talking to this officer, talking to that officer. But really, again, like I said, I've had a chance to speak to the FBI, and they've assured me, in the context of these calls that were being monitored or text messages that were being monitored, they've assured me that there's no further criminal investigation in these officers that were making text messages going back and forth between Boom and them. Yeah.
So
Okay.
is Ken, there's still a criminal investigation ongoing?
I don't know what they're doing with Ken. They just said outside of the two Mentanones, this is what I can tell you, and that's all I can share.
So Chief, speaking to the context of how you guys work with the community to put out clearances, like you said, you gave those explanations, and coupled with speaking with the FBI about no criminal investigations to current officers, why the need for the internal affairs investigation now?
Because, you know, it was this, hey, there's a bunch of corrupt officers. So my job is, well, okay, they weren't doing anything wrong criminally, right? But did they omit or do anything wrong administratively? Because, you know, we have to make sure that, you know, it's brought to our attention. We can't just say, oh, okay, the FBI cleared them, we'll just move on. My job as the chief is to make sure that we did ensure that no administrative wrongdoing was happening at the time, even if it was 6 years ago, right? Yeah.
Do you believe there's any police corruption happening in your department?
Man, you know, that's a very broad stroke statement, Nick, and for you to ask me if there's any police corruption, that's just saying, do you believe that police officers are corrupt? No, I don't. I believe there's a lot of hardworking police officers that come in and day out, do their job and do it with pride. And I will not, you know, take that statement and say, well, you know, is there any police corruption in the Guam Police Department? The job of internal affairs and the job of the chief is to look at specific allegations made against police officers. And our job is to determine if or not there was any wrongdoing committed administratively. And if there's any criminal wrongdoing, of course, we send it up to the AG's office or we work with the Attorney General's office, whether it's the AG then or the AG now.
Again, it wasn't a statement, it was a question, Chief, and again, to the point of this case here, that was where the question was coming out of, so.
Yeah. With respect to this one, again, our job is to do the administrative investigation. But again, like I assured you, the assurance that I got from the FBI, there's nothing that they found to be corrupt in the context of these documents.
In the one-
This one,
In the
police,
one warrant.
in this one warrant for now, yeah.
What about working with the IIT, is that still a thing?
You know, we haven't had a shooting yet. Man, I'm sorry, that knock on wood, but generally that was in place for an officer-involved shooting. Yeah, and especially if a death occurs. Yeah, so, we've had very different conversations with the Attorney General's office. Some of the initiatives that he's probably talked about and has been pushing out, and we've had a big meeting yesterday. But really some of the things that we're addressing with the AG right now, his office is curfew violations, panhandling, and homeless people. So, I think we can save that conversation for a later time because I think I'd like to coordinate with the AG's office and the Lieutenant Governor's office because, we've had that conversation. Okay?
Chief, what's the status of two officers mentioned in the affidavit, Captain Montanoni and Captain Santos? Were they?
No, Captain Mantanonia is retired, yeah.
Okay.
He retired in 2019. And of course, Officer Boom Mantanonia, he retired many years ago, even before I became chief.
What about Captain Santos?
Captain Santos is still employed.
Same rank? She has the same rank?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, she still is.
Okay, where is she assigned? What's her current assignment?
She's in charge of Auxiliary Services Division.
And remains on duty?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I'm not gonna put anybody on leave for something that happened 6 years ago. It makes absolutely no sense.
What message would you give to the community as they've seen this story over the past few weeks and just had a lot of questions of their own?
Absolutely, Nick, and that's why I asked for, I'd like to thank all of you for coming here today. And that's why I asked for this press conference, because I want to assure the community that, my job and the Internal Affairs job and, the rest of our command staff job is to make sure that our officers hold themselves to the highest standard possible. If you feel that there's any wrongdoing, whether it's criminal or administrative, then there are avenues and venues for you to make that be known to the Guam Police Department. And if you don't want to make yourself known by name or whatever, call it in, be anonymous. Crime Stoppers, you can call our dispatch, you can call Crime Stoppers, and we'll take a tip, any tip that you think regarding corrupt officers or allegations of corrupt officers, and we'll look into it. But man, Nick, I'll tell you, we have close to 300 police officers, and there's a lot of good, hard-working police officers out there, day in and day out, They work for not a lot of money, but man, their dedication to the community is, something that, I'm very proud of.
I'd like to take up that
Sure.
issue of reporting. So there have been reports made,
Right.
and they have gone to Internal Affairs, and for whatever reason, Internal Affairs has not produced any reports about what has happened to their investigations against Mandania Drug Task Force officers. And in that warrant, it does mention the involvement of Mandania and the use of Audrey Red Wolford's use of her relationship with Boom Mantanonia, carried on to Ken Mantanonia, who was the supervisor of the division over the Mandania Drug Task Force. And many of the allegations people have made that has led to IA are the same allegations the FBI has made. What can you say about that?
And that's part of what we're looking at now, Troy, is, going back again to this Mandania Drug Task Force, who was there, what is it that they did or didn't do, and how far involved were they? Because, we're only talking about the captain that was in charge of Mandania Drug Task Force. So is it just the captain, or is it the whole group collectively?
Well, according to that warrant, this specific warrant,
Mhm.
Audrey Red Wolford was able to call off a Mandania raid on Nevermind Road.
Wait, this one?
And divert the task force to raid Mark Mayo.
You're talking about 001 or another one?
It's it's in 001.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's in both 001 and 0100.
Okay, I haven't seen 0100. Yeah, I've read 001.
But more than that, just the
Yeah.
general, the general allegations made in
And that's what I was talking about, because, you know, if you go back to 001, right? There was information being passed between the two Mantanonias about surveillance being done at a residence in Iran.
The Belen resident.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's the stuff, you know, that's very concerning. But, you know, unfortunately, they're beyond my reach administratively.
Why?
Because they're no longer employed with the Guam Police Department. I only have jurisdiction over currently employed employees.
But don't you still have Guam police officers who were in Guam, who were in the Mandania drug
Right,
task force
but
at
see,
that
in the
time?
remember, we go back to the context of this. It was one Mantanonia, the captain,
Yes,
texting the other Mantanonia, the retired police officer,
yes.
about the surveillance operations in a residence in Iran. the-
Using the Mandania drug task force.
Right, so I need to, that's part of the investigation, the internal affairs investigation. What part did they have? What part did they knew or didn't know? Did they know that the captain was sharing information?
What is going to make this current IA investigation different from the previous IA investigations where you had members of the community
Because we have,
making these same sort of complaints
because now we have something captured
by an FBI?
by documents, right? Yeah.
Is there any look into how the Mandania Drug Task Force under Ken Mantinonia? Because I'm sure you know that Charissa Tenorio, the current Lieutenant Governor's sister, has complained previously that
Yes.
her false arrest, where she was released by the Attorney General's office, was ordered by Ken Mantinonia, was a political event prior to the election of Leon Guerrero and her brother Josh Tenorio. Is this something that you guys are gonna look into? Because she's never received any justice in that regard.
I'd have to find out and see if she had ever filed a complaint previously, because remember that, I think that happened back in 2016, 2017 maybe?
2018.
Or 2018. So at the time, if she had come in and made a complaint, we need to figure out if, who had taken the complaint, if any was made in internal affairs. And, you know, see what we can do to move on, because again, we go back to that 90-day rule, right?
So Chief, why was the task force dissolved in 2019?
Well, you know what, task forces, Steve, sometimes have a shelf life. So I'll give you an example. I was once in charge of the Unsolved Homicide Task Force, right? And so when 9/11 hit, the task force just kind of went away and dissolved. We used to have the Violent Street Crimes Task Force, right? But one thing's always for sure, no matter what you call it, whether you call it the Violent Street Crimes Task Force, or the Mandanya Drug Task Force, the Unsolved Homicide Task Forces, sometimes they come and go and they dissolve. What's always been constant in the Guam Police Department is that we've always had a narcotics section, and that was called the Special Investigation Section. So, you know, whether you call it one name or you call it another, the objectives are still the same, to investigate drug trafficking, drug dealing, drug use, right? So whether you want to call it SIS, you want to call it MDTF, or you want to call it VSCTF, the objectives are still the same. Well, I just choose, as a chief, I just choose to call it the Special Investigation Section, and I chose to replace the Mandania Drug Task Force with newer officers.
And since Captain Montanoni retired, the IA investigation doesn't involve him at all? Because he's not an employee?
He's out, you're right, he's outside of the scope of what I can do as a chief to investigate.
So Chief, considering a lot of this stuff, most of it or all of it happened before you were chief, was there any kind of, I don't know, documents when you were briefed or getting, the transition was starting? Was anything being investigated that you know of before?
Not that I'm aware of,
Or
yeah.
was the prior chief known to any of this, or?
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, when I came, you know, well, I'm not sure, I don't want to say unfortunately, but when I came in as chief, you know, I start fresh,
Yeah.
January 7th. What does Chief Ignacio know? What's going on, and what do I need to do to move on?
So there's no
And that's why,
transition?
you know, like to Troy's question, I have to go back and look, was there a complaint made by Mr. Tenorio back in 2018? And what, if any, was the outcome?
Have you considered maybe speaking to the prior chief about any of this, or any kind of?
You know, Shane, you know, the first 90 days, there's a lot of getting used to the job, right?
Yeah.
I gotta get my feet wet. I gotta jump into the deep end, if you will. And you know, I don't just run the internal affairs section. I run a whole department with 300 plus employees. So, you know, sometimes, you know, we just have to look at the whole picture. I have budget presentations, you know, a lot of things that come up as the chief that I have to look into. And so, you know, not to say that things are missed, but, you know, whatever happened in the previous administration, I can't sit down here and lay blame to anything. I just have to pick a point and move forward.
Have you guys looked into the possibility that your agency has sent things to the Attorney General's office that ended up in plea agreements or court cases or whatever that might be, that was the result of, police corruption? Bad information,
Not
bad
that,
practices.
not that I'm aware of, yeah.
Is that something that you're going to look into?
Unless, so that's the thing we have to remember about internal affairs investigations. We have to look at a specific act and a specific allegation, right? And that's also, I think, found in what's called the Garrity warning, right? I can't just bring an officer and say, hey, are you corrupt? Hey, are you a non-performing officer? I have to look at a specific act, and I have to look at a specific omission of the act or non-conformance of an act. Yeah, so that's how we conduct internal affairs investigation. We can't just paint everything with a broad brush over in internal affairs. So we look at, and that's why, when we talk about this document, so now we're looking specifically at what is contained in this document that we need to investigate. And when we bring in 0010, it's another start date, another set of investigations to be done.
Well, let's talk about that start date, the 90 days, right?
Right.
You've already received 00100, so wouldn't the 90-day mark have started?
When I
the day you
received it.
received it?
Yeah, it's when I knew or should have known.
When you knew or should have known, when you received the document?
Yeah.
Sorry, my phone is
No
dying.
problem.
And, thank you. And, what assurance can you give to the public that this IA investigation, or whatever investigation happens within the Guam Police Department about its own officers, is going to be a fair investigation? Considering.
Considering everything, right?
allegations, yeah.
And that's why we're here today, because, we talked about possible criminal corruption of police officers. And that's why before I called this press conference, I wanted to make sure that I talked to the agency that was doing the investigation. Hey, what do you know? Or what can you, not so much what you know, but because they already know, but what can you tell me that I can say that one, doesn't jeopardize any ongoing investigation, and two, you can safely say to me that I can talk to about openly. And that's the assurance I got from the FBI. They're talking to them, hey, this is where you're at with this, and that's why I made that statement earlier. Done, Nick?
Have
For this case, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
you spoken with the governor about this?
I think the governor and the lieutenant governor and the chief of staff, the deputy, are all well aware of this. They've had the chance of, just as much as I had to look at the documents. It's been made available, at least I know, to the deputy and the chief. And, we've discussed this at great length. And chief, do your job. Do what you need to do. Do an investigation, and let the chips fall where they may.
Can you let us know where in the totem pole of priorities resolving police corruption issues?
When this thing came up, like I said, it's a priority. I even brought in an extra officer to help with the internal affairs investigation.
I meant for the governor, if you had this discussion with her, where is in her list of priorities?
The governor, lieutenant governor, entrusted me with the Guam Police Department to be its leader. So my job is just to make sure that I understand where to prioritize what needs to be done. And this is one of the high priority things that we're looking into. Okay, thanks, Ray. Anybody else? We're good?
Other questions?
Sure.
Other
Any other?
cases? Okay.
Yeah, we can talk to you over there. You want to talk to me about something? Anybody else?
I want to ask about another
Sure.
case.
Which
Can
one?
I ask you now?
Absolutely.
The Nikita Uddin case.
And
You
I haven't heard what's going on with that trial. I
So
apologize.
it's been suspended ever since Judge Tolentino had his medical issues. He was the judge.
Oh, okay,
But
yeah.
during the trial, evidence was brought up that police investigators and the last AG's investigators interviewed the lone eyewitness in the case, who said that the person who was driving the Jeep matched the description of one of the other women in the car,
A passenger, not a driver, right?
passenger, not the so-called driver.
Yeah, I haven't read that testimony yet.
Okay.
I haven't seen any of the transcripts or anything.
I was just wondering, what information did the police send to the AG's office?
Well, we sent the whole video. We sent all the videos that we obtained from the venue.
Did the police recommend the charging of Nikita Uddin, or did the police recommend the charging of someone else?
Let me check back with Highway Patrol, but I think the recommendation given to us was just forward the case over, give us all your findings, and we'll review the case and determine, and I think that's how they determine who to charge.
The AG's office.
Right, the Attorney General's office, right,
And with all of that information that you guys sent over.
absolutely, yeah, okay. Thank you very much, everybody, have a good day.
I have a quick
Oh,
question.
hi, Don, okay, but,
The incident happened today regarding a GDOE student. Some sources say that a 14-year-old.
Berlin will talk to you about that, she has the information. Yeah, she'll let you know, she can do it on camera on site.
Dull knives are the absolute worst, but I will take any dull knife and put a razor sharp edge on it so you won't have to hack or try to saw your ingredients when prepping your food. I sharpen knives, cleavers, machetes, and much more. Shoot me a text, WhatsApp, or give me a call for more information on how you can get your knives sharp.